The rain poured down in relentless sheets, casting an eerie glow over the quiet suburban streets. Amidst the gloom, a lone figure moved stealthily through the shadows, clutching a manila envelope close to his chest. This was no ordinary late-night stroll. Something sinister was afoot. Glancing anxiously over his shoulder, the man quickened his pace, his footsteps echoing like the steady drumbeat of fate. As he approached his modest townhouse, a sense of dread began to take hold. Had he been followed? Were the walls closing in? Fumbling with his keys, the man darted inside, slamming the door behind him. He pressed his back against the wood, chest heaving, eyes darting around the dimly lit foyer. Something wasn't right. The air felt thick with tension, the silence deafening. Mustering his courage, he moved cautiously through the house, every creak of the floorboards sending a jolt of fear through his body. Reaching his study, he paused, hand hovering over the doorknob. This was it, the moment of truth. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside, the manila envelope still clutched tightly in his grasp. As his gaze swept the room, his heart sank. The desk drawers had been ransacked, papers scattered everywhere. Someone had been here, searching for something. Looking for this. The chilling voice cut through the stillness like a knife, and the man whirled around to find a figure standing in the shadows, holding a single sheet of paper. The dim light cast an ominous glow over the intruder's face, revealing a cruel smile. "How did you?" the man stammered, his voice quivering with fear. "You've been a very naughty boy, haven't you, Mr. Wilkins?" The intruder purred, stepping forward. "All those little secrets you've been hiding, the corruption, the kickbacks, the embezzlement. Text. The Homeowners Association doesn't take kindly to such indiscretions." Mr. Wilkins felt the blood drain from his face. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied, his grip on the envelope tightening. The intruder's smile widened. "Oh, but I think you do." Reaching into his coat, he produced a small device, its red light blinking ominously. "You see, we've been watching you for a while now, and we have all the evidence we need to bring you down." Mr. Wilkins' heart raced, his mind scrambling for a way out. He had to act fast before it was too late. Summoning every ounce of courage, he lunged forward, the envelope raised like a shield. But the intruder was quicker, sidestepping the attack with ease. In a flash, he had Mr. Wilkins pinned against the wall, the blinking device pressed against his temple. "Tsk, Mr. Wilkins, did you really think you could outsmart the Homeowners Association?" The intruder hissed, his breath hot on Mr. Wilkins' face. "We have eyes and ears everywhere. You're ours now." Mr. Wilkins' world began to spin, the walls closing in around him. This couldn't be happening. He had to find a way out, had to expose the truth. But as the intruder's grip tightened, the envelope slipping from his grasp, he knew his time was running out. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the intruder's triumphant gaze, a chilling promise of what was to come. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy with the weight of the night's events. As the sun rose over the quiet suburban neighborhood, a lone figure emerged from the shadows. Sarah Winters, a determined and resilient homeowner who had long been at odds with the corrupt Homeowners Association. Sarah had always known that the HOA was a force to be reckoned with, but the disappearance of her neighbor, Mr. Wilkins, had sent shockwaves through the community. She had heard the rumors, the whispers of his involvement in the association's shady dealings, but she never imagined it would come to this. As she walked the streets, her mind raced with questions. Where was Mr. Wilkins? What had he discovered that had put him in such grave danger? And most importantly, who was behind the association's sinister machinations? Reaching her own modest townhouse, Sarah paused, her gaze drawn to the shadowy figure lurking across the street. It was one of the HOA's enforcers, no doubt keeping a watchful eye on her every move. The message was clear. They knew she was onto them, and they weren't going to let her interfere. Steeling her resolve, Sarah stepped inside, her fingers trembling as she reached for the phone. She had to call the authorities to report Mr. Wilkins' disappearance and the HOA's blatant intimidation tactics. But even as she dialed, a nagging doubt crept into her mind. What if the authorities were already in the HOA's pocket? What if her efforts to expose the truth were met with indifference or, worse, retaliation? Hanging up the phone, Sarah moved to her desk, her gaze settling on the manila envelope that had been left there the night before. Mr. Wilkins had risked everything to get this to her, and she knew she had to honor his sacrifice. Carefully opening the envelope, Sarah's eyes widened as she pored over the documents inside. Bank statements, invoices, and detailed records of the HOA's underhanded dealings. It was all there, a damning indictment of the association's corruption. But as she continued to read, a sense of unease began to creep over her. These documents were more than just evidence of wrongdoing. They were a roadmap, a blueprint for the HOA's entire operation. And if the intruder had been able to find them in Mr. Wilkins' home, it meant that the association was one step ahead of them. Suddenly, the silence of the house was shattered by the sound of a door slamming. Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest, as footsteps echoed in the hallway. She had to get out of here, had to find a safe place to hide the documents. Quickly, she tucked the envelope into her jacket and made her way to the back door. But as she reached for the handle, it swung open, revealing a tall, imposing figure. It was one of the HOA's enforcers, a sinister smile plastered across his face. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Winters," he drawled, blocking her path. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way out, but the man's hulking presence and the menacing glint in his eyes made it clear that there was no escape. She was trapped, and the HOA was closing in. As the enforcer advanced, Sarah's grip tightened on the envelope, her resolve hardening. She may have been outmatched, but she was far from defeated. With a steely gaze, she stood her ground, ready to face whatever the HOA had in store for her. The future may have been uncertain, but one thing was clear. Sarah Winters was not going down without a fight. The air was thick with tension as the imposing HOA enforcer loomed over Sarah Winters, his eyes narrowed with malice. Sarah's heart raced, but she refused to back down, her grip on the incriminating documents tightening with each passing second. "So, Mrs. Winters," the enforcer drawled, his voice dripping with disdain, "it seems you've been poking your nose where it doesn't belong. That's a dangerous game you're playing." Sarah's jaw tightened, her gaze unwavering. "I'm not playing any games, Mr. Brennan. I'm simply seeking the truth, and I won't be intimidated by your association's tactics." Brennan let out a harsh laugh, the sound echoing through the silent house. "The truth, eh? Well, let me tell you something, my dear. The truth is a very dangerous thing, especially when it comes to the HOA." He stepped closer, his imposing figure casting a shadow over Sarah. "You see, no take kindly to those who challenge our authority, and we have ways of dealing with troublemakers." Sarah's breath caught in her throat, but she refused to let her fear show. "Is that a threat, Mr. Brennan?" "Consider it a friendly warning," Brennan replied, his lips curling into a sinister grin. "The HOA has eyes and ears everywhere, Mrs. Winters. We know your every move, your every interaction, and we won't hesitate to take appropriate action if you continue to interfere with our affairs." Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way out of this precarious situation. She couldn't back down, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. But the risk of retaliation was all too real. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Brennan's smile widened. "Simple. Hand over those documents and we'll forget this ever happened." Sarah's grip on the envelope tightened. "I can't do that. These documents are the only evidence we have of the HOA's corruption. I won't let you bury the truth." Brennan's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing with a dangerous intensity. "Then I'm afraid we have a problem, Mrs. Winters." In one swift motion, he lunged forward, his hand closing around Sarah's wrist. She let out a startled cry, the envelope slipping from her grasp as she struggled against his iron grip. "No," she cried, watching helplessly as the precious documents scattered across the floor. Brennan let out a triumphant laugh, his hold on Sarah's wrist tightening. "You made a grave mistake, my dear. The HOA always gets what it wants." Sarah's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way to escape, but Brennan's grip was unyielding. She was trapped, helpless against the might of the Homeowners Association. Just as all hope seemed lost, a sudden commotion outside caught their attention. The sound of sirens pierced the air, followed by the screeching of tires. Brennan's eyes widened, his grip on Sarah's wrist loosening momentarily. "What the?" Sarah didn't hesitate. Summoning every ounce of strength, she wrenched her arm free and made a desperate dash for the scattered documents. But Brennan was quick to recover, his hand closing around her ankle and pulling her back. "Where do you think you're going, Mrs. Winters?" he growled, his face contorted with rage. Sarah braced herself for the impact, but just as Brennan's grip tightened, a deafening crash echoed through the house. The front door had been smashed open, and a team of heavily armed FBI agents stormed in, their weapons drawn. "Freeze!" one of the agents shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "FBI, drop your weapon and step away from the woman." Brennan's eyes widened with panic, and for a moment he seemed to hesitate. But then, with a defiant snarl, he lunged towards Sarah, the documents clutched in his hand. The sound of gunfire echoed through the house, and Brennan's lifeless body crumpled to the floor, the incriminating documents scattering once more. Sarah stared in shock, her heart pounding in her chest. The FBI had arrived, but at what cost? And what did this mean for the future of the HOA's reign of terror? The chaos of the FBI's dramatic intervention had barely subsided when a tall, authoritative figure strode into the room, his sharp gaze sweeping over the scene. "Agent Daniels," he barked, addressing the lead agent. "Report." Agent Daniels snapped to attention, his face grim. "Sir, we've apprehended the primary suspect, Mr. Brennan, but he's been neutralized. We also recovered the incriminating documents that were the target of our investigation." The stern-faced man nodded, his expression unreadable. "And the homeowner?" Agent Daniels glanced at Sarah, who stood frozen in the aftermath of the confrontation. "This is Mrs. Winters, sir. She was the one who tipped us off about the corruption within the Homeowners Association. The man's eyes narrowed as he studied Sarah, his lips pressed into a thin line. I see, Mrs. Winters, I'm Director Ashford of the FBI. I must say you certainly stirred up a hornet's nest. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to be cowed. Director Ashford, I'm glad the FBI finally took action, but I have to wonder, how long have you known about the HOA's illegal activities? Ashford's brow furrowed, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. Mrs. Winters, I assure you the FBI has been investigating the Homeowners Association for some time. We've been building a case, gathering evidence, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Sarah's eyes narrowed. And how convenient that moment was, just as I stumbled upon the truth. Forgive me, Director, but it all seems a bit too orchestrated. Ashford's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. I can assure you, Mrs. Winters, that the FBI's actions were not orchestrated. We've been working tirelessly to bring down this corrupt organization, and your involvement has simply accelerated the process. Sarah studied the director's face, searching for any hint of deception. If that's the case, then why was one of your own agents working with the HOA? Why was Mr. Brennan able to get so close to me, to threaten me, and try to take those documents? Ashford's eyes widened, and for a moment, he seemed caught off guard. What are you implying, Mrs. Winters? I'm implying that the FBI may have had more than a passing interest in keeping the HOA's activities under wraps, Sarah said, her voice steady and unwavering, and that your investigation may have been more of a cover-up than a genuine effort to expose the truth. Ashford's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. I can assure you, Mrs. Winters, that the FBI is committed to rooting out corruption, no matter where it may be found. If there are any irregularities within our own ranks, I can promise you that they will be thoroughly investigated. Sarah nodded, her gaze unwavering. I appreciate your assurances, Director, but forgive me if I don't take them at face value. After all, the HOA has been running rampant for years, and it took the actions of a single homeowner to finally bring them down. Ashford's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw a flash of anger in his expression. Mrs. Winters, I would advise you to tread carefully. The Homeowners Association is a powerful entity, and they have friends in high places. If you continue to poke your nose where it doesn't belong, you may find yourself in a world of trouble. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to back down. I'm not afraid of the HOA or their friends, Director. I'm committed to exposing the truth, no matter the cost. Ashford's lips pressed into a thin line, and he let out a heavy sigh. Very well, Mrs. Winters, but I must warn you, the road ahead may be more perilous than you ever imagined. With that, he turned and strode out of the room, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of her newfound knowledge and the unsettling feeling that the FBI may not be the ally she had hoped for. The sun had long since set, casting an eerie glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood. For Sarah Winters, the events of the day had left her shaken, her trust in the authorities shattered. As she pored over the incriminating documents salvaged from the confrontation with the HOA enforcer, a growing sense of unease settled over her. The FBI's involvement, the ominous warning from Director Ashford, it all seemed to point to a deeper, more sinister web of corruption. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information she had gathered. The HOA's stranglehold on the community, the blatant disregard for homeowners' rights, and now the apparent collusion between the association and the very agency tasked with investigating them. It was all too much to process. Glancing out the window, Sarah's gaze fell upon the shadowy figure of a man lurking in the darkness. She felt a chill run down her spine, the realization dawning that she was being watched even in the supposed safety of her own home. Clutching the documents tightly, Sarah moved to her desk, her fingers trembling as she dialed a number. She had to find someone she could trust, someone who could help her navigate this treacherous maze of secrets and lies. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity, until finally a familiar voice answered. Hello? Detective Sanchez, it's Sarah Winters. I need your help. Sanchez's voice was laced with concern. Sarah, what's wrong? Are you all right? I'm not sure, Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The FBI raided my house earlier, and they took down one of the HOA's enforcers. But now I'm not even sure if I can trust the Bureau. Sanchez let out a heavy sigh. I see. What's going on, Sarah? Sarah quickly recounted the events of the day, from Mr. Wilkins' disappearance to the confrontation with Brennan and the FBI's subsequent intervention. As she spoke, she could hear the detective's breath catch in his throat. My God, Sarah, Sanchez murmured. This is bigger than we ever imagined. If the FBI is involved. I know, Sarah interrupted, her tone urgent. That's why I need your help, detective. I've got the documents that Mr. Wilkins risked everything to get to me, and I need to figure out how to expose the truth without putting myself in harm's way. Sanchez was silent for a moment, the weight of Sarah's request palpable. All right, Sarah, I'll do what I can, but you need to be careful. If the HOA and the FBI are really in cahoots, you're in a very dangerous position. I know, Sarah replied, her voice resolute, but I can't back down, not now. Too many people have suffered because of the HOA's corruption, and I won't let them get away with it. Sanchez let out a heavy sigh. Understood. I'll start digging into the FBI's involvement, see if I can find any leads. In the meantime, lay low, Sarah. Stay off the grid as much as possible, and don't trust anyone, not even the Bureau. I will, Detective, Sarah assured him. And thank you. I know I'm asking a lot, but don't worry about it. Sanchez interrupted. This is bigger than all of us now. We need to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes. Sarah nodded, even though she knew Sanchez couldn't see her. All right, I'll be in touch. As she hung up the phone, Sarah felt a wave of relief and anxiety wash over her. She knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, but she was determined to see it through. The truth had to be uncovered, no matter the cost. Casting one last glance out the window, Sarah tucked the documents safely away and steeled herself for the challenges that lay ahead. The battle against the HOA was far from over, and she was more determined than ever to emerge victorious. The air was thick with tension as Sarah Winters sat at her desk, her eyes scanning the documents that had become the centerpiece of this high-stakes power struggle. The revelations contained within were damning, a web of corruption that stretched from the Homeowners Association all the way to the highest levels of the FBI. As she pored over the meticulously detailed records, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of her stomach. The scope of the HOA's influence was staggering, their tentacles reaching into every corner of the community. And now, with the apparent collusion of the Bureau, the task of exposing the truth had become infinitely more complex. Sarah's mind raced, her thoughts whirring as she tried to piece together a strategy. She knew she couldn't trust the authorities, not when the very institutions she had relied on were seemingly complicit in the HOA's misdeeds. She was on her own, forced to navigate a treacherous landscape of deceit and betrayal. A sudden movement outside caught her eye, and she instinctively ducked down, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadowy figure she had spotted earlier was still there, a silent sentinel watching her every move. Whoever they were not going to make this easy. Steeling her nerves, Sarah reached for the phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Detective Sanchez's number. She could update him on the latest developments to see if he had uncovered any new leads. Sanchez, the detective's gruff voice, answered, and Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. Detective, it's Sarah. I've been going through the documents, and it's worse than we thought. Sanchez let out a heavy sigh. I was afraid of that. What have you found? Sarah quickly relayed the details, her voice hushed and urgent. The HOA's corruption runs deep, Detective. It got their hooks in everything, from local government to the FBI. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Damn it, Sanchez muttered. This is a mess, Sarah. If the Bureau is involved, we're dealing the whole different ballgame. I know, Sarah replied, her gaze darting around the room, searching for any sign of an intruder. That's why I need your help, Detective. I can't do this alone, and I don't know who else to turn to. Sanchez was silent for a moment, the weight of Sarah's plea palpable. All right, Sarah, I'll do what I can, but you need to be extremely careful. If the HOA and the FBI are working together, they're not going to make this easy for you. I understand, Sarah said, her voice trembling, but I can't back down, not now. Too many people have suffered because of this corruption, and I won't let them get away with it. Sanchez let out a resigned sigh. I admire your tenacity, Sarah, but you need to be smart about this. These people are dangerous, and they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to protect their interests. I know the risks, Detective, Sarah replied, her resolve hardening, but I'm not going to let fear stop me. I'm going to expose the truth, no matter what it takes. Sanchez was silent for a moment, and Sarah could almost see the gears turning in his mind. All right, Sarah. Here's what we're going to do. As Sanchez laid out his plan, Sarah felt a surge of hope and determination. It was a risky gambit, but it was the only way forward. She had to trust in Sanchez's expertise and in her own unwavering commitment to the truth. Glancing out the window, she caught a glimpse of the shadowy figure once more, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. But she refused to be cowed, her grip tightening on the incriminating documents as she prepared to take the fight to the HOA and their powerful allies. The road ahead would be treacherous, but Sarah Winters was more determined than ever to see this through. The corruption would be exposed, no matter the cost. The rain had returned, pelting the windows with a relentless fury as Sarah Winters sat in the dimly lit office, the weight of the documents she held seemingly growing heavier with each passing moment. Her conversation with Detective Sanchez had left her on edge, the gravity of the situation they were facing sinking in with each new revelation. The HOA's tentacles had reached far beyond the confines of the community, ensnaring even the highest echelons of the FBI. A betrayal that had shaken Sarah to her core. As she pored over the meticulously detailed records, her mind raced, searching for a way to navigate this treacherous landscape without succumbing to the forces that sought to silence her. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but the stakes were too high to turn back now. Glancing out the window, Sarah caught a glimpse of the shadowy figure that had been haunting her steps, a stark reminder of the relentless pursuit of the HOA and their powerful allies. She had to be one step ahead to outmaneuver her opponents at every turn. Steeling her nerves, Sarah rose from her desk, her grip tightening on the incriminating documents. It was time to put Sanchez's plan into motion, to take the fight directly to the heart of the corruption. Slipping out the back doors, Sarah made her way through the rain-soaked streets, her eyes constantly scanning her surroundings for any sign of danger. The air was thick with tension, the eerie silence punctuated only by the occasional rumble of thunder. As she approached the nondescript office building, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This was it, the nerve center of the HOA's operation, the epicenter of the corruption she had vowed to expose. Steeling her nerves, she pulled open the door and stepped inside, her senses on high alert. The lobby was empty, save for a lone security guard seated behind a desk, his eyes glued to a flickering monitor. "Can I help you, ma'am?" the guard asked, his voice gruff and disinterested. Sarah forced a smile, her heart pounding in her chest. "Yes, I'm here to speak with someone in the HOA office. It's a matter of urgent importance." The guard's eyes narrowed, his gaze sweeping over her. "You have an appointment?" "No, but I assure you this can't wait," Sarah replied, her voice laced with a sense of urgency. The guard studied her for a moment, his brow furrowing. "I'm afraid I can't let you just waltz in without an appointment. Homeowners Association policy, you understand." Sarah felt a surge of frustration, but she refused to let it show. "Please, this is a matter of public interest. I have information that could expose the HOA's corruption. Surely you can make an exception." The guard's expression hardened and he shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but those are the rules. Now, if you don't have an appointment, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Sarah's mind raced, desperately searching for a way to bypass the obstinate guard. She couldn't give up now, not when she was so close to the truth. Suddenly, an idea struck her, and a triumphant smile spread across her face. "Very well, then. I'll just have to speak with your supervisor instead." The guard's eyes widened and he straightened in his chair. "I'm afraid I can't do that, ma'am. The supervisor is a very busy person, and they don't take kindly to unscheduled visits." "Oh, I think they'll make an exception for me," Sarah replied, her voice dripping with confidence. "After all, I have information that could bring down the entire Homeowners Association." The guard's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. "I don't know about that, ma'am. Maybe we could work something out." But before he could finish, a sound of a door slamming echoed through the lobby, and a group of armed security guards spilled out, their weapons drawn. Sarah's heart raced, her grip tightening on the documents as she realized that her plan had backfired. The HOA was closing in, and she was running out of options. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she found herself surrounded by the armed security guards, their weapons trained on her with unwavering precision. The air was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Clutching the incriminating documents tightly, Sarah knew that she had to think fast to find a way out of this seemingly inescapable predicament. The HOA had closed in, their grip tightening with each passing moment, and she could feel the weight of their powerful allies bearing down on her. Well, a familiar voice drawled, and Sarah's gaze snapped to the side, where a tall, imposing figure strode into the lobby. It was Director Ashford, his expression a mask of calculated indifference. "Mrs. Winters, I must say you've been quite the thorn in our side." Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a response. "Director Ashford, I should have known you were in on this. The FBI's involvement in the HOA's corruption is proof enough of your complicity." Ashford's lips curled into a humorless smile. "Ah, yes, the documents. I'm afraid I can't let you leave with those, Mrs. Winters. They contain information that could, shall we say, be detrimental to certain interests." Sarah's grip on the papers tightened, her knuckles turning white. "So, what, you're just going to have your goons take me out? Is that how the FBI operates these days?" Ashford's expression darkened and he raised a hand, signaling the guards to stand down. "Not at all, Mrs. Winters. We're not in the business of eliminating troublesome civilians. No, we have a different plan in mind for you." Sarah's brow furrowed, a chill running down her spine. "What are you talking about?" Ashford's smile widened and he gestured towards the guards. "You see, Mrs. Winters, the Homeowners Association has a rather unique way of dealing with those who defy its authority. And the FBI, well, we're more than happy to look the other way, as it were." Sarah's eyes widened with horror as the guards moved closer, their weapons still trained on her. "You can't be serious. You're going to let them, what, kidnap me? Bury me alive?" Ashford shrugged, an air of nonchalance surrounding him. Let's just say the HOA has its own methods of persuasion, and as long as they keep their activities under wraps, the FBI is more than willing to turn a blind eye. Sarah's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out, but the guards had her cornered, their grip tightening with each passing second. She couldn't let them take the documents, couldn't allow the truth to be buried forever. Suddenly, an idea struck her, and she knew it was her only chance. Summoning every ounce of courage, she took a deep breath and made her move. In one swift motion, she hurled the documents towards the nearest guard, the papers scattering through the air like a swarm of angry hornets. The guards recoiled in surprise, their weapons momentarily lowered, and Sarah seized the opportunity to make a break for the exit. But Ashford was quicker, his hand reaching into his coat and emerging with a sleek black device. "I'm afraid I can't let you leave, Mrs. Winters." The device emitted a high-pitched whine, and Sarah felt her muscles seize up, her body convulsing as a wave of excruciating pain washed over her. She crumpled to the floor, the documents scattering around her, and as her vision began to fade, she caught a glimpse of Ashford's triumphant grin. "Sweet dreams, Mrs. Winters," he murmured, his voice dripping with malice. "When you wake up, the truth will be long buried, and the HOA's reign of terror will continue unabated." Sarah's world went black, the weight of her failure and the looming darkness of the HOA's endgame swallowing her whole. But even as she lost consciousness, a glimmer of hope flickered in her mind. She had to believe that the truth would find a way to surface, no matter the cost. The battle may have been lost, but the war was far from over.